Dollard, let me start with you. You played every one of your 302 games in Chicago in front of goalie Glenn Hall, and that was during his record never to be broken of 502 consecutive games. Hall played 502 games in a row in nets. I want to ask you if you thought that Glenn Hall might have pretty much gone on forever, and I want to ask you too, are you surprised that the Blackhawks have not won the Stanley Cup since you left the team?
When I left, I told them they never win the Stanley Cup. Ted Lindsay and I were with Chicago, and they never did. We speak to Bobby L. and Nikita once in a while. They still can't understand how come they never won the Stanley Cup after we left. Because when we arrived in Chicago, the guys were friends. Litzenberger would go out with Glenn Hall. They were all 2 by 2, 2 by 2. After each practice, the only two guys left in the room were Ted Lindsay, across one side of the room, and I was on the other side. So I said to Ted after the third time, Ted, why don't we get together and try and get the bloody team going? He says, yeah, he says, this is the way they play here. I says, not for long, Ted. You and I have got to speak to those guys. And then we got together, and then the guys, we started to go out, 6 guys together, 8 guys after practices, 8 guys, 10 guys. First thing you knew, we had everybody. We'd at least go out and have 1 beer together, beer or Coke or 7-Up, whatever the guys were drinking in those days. After practice, generally it was a beer. So we'd go and have a beer, and we started to talk, and that's when the team started to move. We moved. On defense, it was, hey?
That's when you beat us.
Yeah, that's right.
We
had Jack Evans, Al Arbor, Pierre Pilote, Moose Vasco and I on defense, Glenn Hall in the nets. Up front we had Bobby Hull, Makita, Billy Hay, Ad McDonald, and Kenny Warren. We had really a good team, but the guys never played together. But after that we got together and the team started to move. And when we left, when Ted Lindsay and I left, we told them they'd never win the Stanley Cup again. They did what they did before we arrived. They got 2 guys, 2 friends, so that was it. Thank you.
Dollard is wearing 2 rings today. On one hand, he's wearing a ring that commemorates his 4 Stanley Cups with the Montreal Canadiens. On the other hand, he's wearing a ring that signifies his Stanley Cup victory with the Chicago Blackhawks. You touch upon the idea of family and closeness on a team. Phil, you played on a team in that wonderful dynasty of the Canadiens from 56 to 60. There were, I think, 14 or 15 players who played on all 5 of those teams. Phil was on the last 4 of them. And I guess I want to ask you about family and the Montreal Canadiens. There's been a great sense of how the Canadiens are a wonderful organization and how it really is a family. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I missed the first playoff Stanley Cup mainly because I was too young. So I was a standby, and the next 4, of course, I matured and went into the Canadians with Henry and Beliveau. What I found with the Canadian organization is that they stick together as a team, not only during the winter season, but year-round. In the summer, we'd play ball, we'd frequent each other as often as possible. And this is why the Canadian franchise is such a winning organization, is because they stick together and they play together. I noticed the changes when I went to New York. New York is a big city. And of course, being so big, the guys are scattered all over the place. So the only time we'd see each other would be at game time or practice. We had a fairly good team. We should have won maybe 1 or 2 Stanley Cups while I was there. We came close on 1 or 2 occasions. But at the end, it's because we're not together as much as we should have been. In St. Louis, of course, we, again, I was at my last stages in the game. There was a fine organization. It was only in the 3rd year they were in the league, and we got into the finals. They were a little closer because of the element of Scotty Bowman being there and trying to instill the same type of play and organization as the Montreal Canadiens. This is what hockey is all about. If you play as a team, you're going to win as a team, and you're going to win a lot of championships. And I was fortunate to have a coach before I made the NHL, a guy that we have here standing between us, Dollard and I, and Elmer Lach. And I followed his career and everything that he did on the ice. And when he coached me, I remember one game we were playing for the Edinburgh Trophy, excuse me, the Edinburgh Trophy in Western Canada. Of course, the elevation is pretty high there. And it was in the middle of May, so you can imagine it's getting a little warmer. So every time I get off the ice, he'd say, "Are you ready for another shift?" And he'd keep putting gum in my mouth with a lot of sugar in it. And I said, "Yes, I will. As long as you don't put any more gum, I can't breathe." So this is the element of having had the opportunity of having Elmer, especially as one of my coaches. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I'll move on to Elmer, who obviously, you know what, everybody hears about Rocket Richard in this game and in this city, certainly. And without Elmer Lach, Rocket Richard would not have been as good a hockey player as he was, because Elmer was the guy who was going into the corners, getting his nose broken 7 times, feeding the puck out and doing the work. He was the guy who was in there as the warrior. And don't get me wrong, Rocket Richard was a fabulous hockey player, but a good deal of it was credit to him. And Elmer, I want to ask you, what was it that made the punchline so magical? I mean, you and I have spoken, and you said you guys are just 3 average hockey players. Well, I think that history proves otherwise, but tell me a little bit about the punchline and what it was like playing with the Rocket in tow.
Thanks, Dave. To play for Canadians, you got to be lucky. I was very lucky. When I came east in 1940, there was the guy that brought me here was Paul Haynes, and I ended up taking his job. But the other guy that I did a lot of connection with was Red Story. Now, Red was a good official, and he was honest. And when he give us a penalty, I said, "Red, that's not the rule." He said, "How do you know?" And I said, "I got the book right here in my back pocket." So what I used to do in the intermission, I used to look at the book, read the rules, and I'd go to him and I'd say, "Red, when you go back out, look at the book, go to page 92, paragraph 3, read the rules." So when he came back, he said, "Elmer," he said, "I didn't think you could read." I must say that I'm fortunate enough to be invited out to a lot of functions, and I always say to my wife, "Please, I'll always toast you if I'm asked to say anything." So I always did, charge your glasses or make a toast to my wife. Said, "Please, here's a toast to your wife, to your husband's wife, to your wife's husband."
You got it.
Yeah. Of course, speaking is not for me. I don't like to talk.
Yeah, I can tell you that's true.
But I would like to say that I've been coming to this function for a few years, seen a lot of great friends, and I've lived here since 1940. I was lucky enough to be nominated in the Quebec Hall of Fame, and I was asked to say a few words. And while I was up the mountain, the little guy down the front, he said, "Elmer, you've been here a long time, you're married, your wife is French, why don't you speak French?" Well, I thought for a minute, and then I said, "Well, I'm a slow learner."
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Kirk, I just want to say, when you're talking next to Bob Gainey, you can tell him to forget about Sheldon Surrey or Andrei Markov. These 3 guys are unrestricted free agents. They're looking for contracts, and they don't have agents. Thanks very much, and thank you, gentlemen.